From Forex Traders Daily, this is your daily analysis with Ross Mullins, live from Richmond, Virginia.
Hello everyone, this is today's video analysis for April 1st, 2016. In just a moment, we're going to be taking a look and doing a broad overview of each of the U.S. currency pairs in anticipation of significant news coming up at 8:30 a.m. Eastern U.S. time. We have, of course, non-farm payrolls, highly anticipated jobs information, unemployment rate information. So we'll be watching for significant movement in the market. If there is agreement with the Fed chair's speech earlier on in the week regarding weakness for the U.S. dollar and the U.S. economy, then we might see a significant sell-off of the U.S. dollar. If there's some disagreement with what the Fed had to say earlier on this week, then we may see some pullbacks for the U.S. dollar and some gains back of those moves against the dollar earlier on in the week. So we'll watch for that coming up at 8:30 a.m. Eastern U.S. time today. So we'll look at each of the U.S. currency pairs. But first, just a recap of yesterday's trade suggestion here on the USDCAD. On the dollar CAD, we were looking for the breakout underneath a support level for the continuation lower of the downtrend. You can see clearly here it's been a downtrend. We see yesterday and the day before and even so far today bottoming out here around the pink shaded area into the 2920 level. The red line at the very bottom of that pink zone, 2920, represented the breaking point. If it would have gotten underneath there, we would have expected it to go lower down into the 1.2700s. We looked at this significantly during yesterday's live trade room. So we did not see the breakout. Obviously here on the daily it looks like a false breakout. It was just a challenge and test of that level and couldn't break it, and now moving back higher again into the 1.3000s. Take it down to the 4-hour time frame. And you can see what happened here even on the 4-hour. It tried, it attempted, no breakout. And we discussed this in the trade room yesterday, how I didn't consider this a breakout because there wasn't an open and close underneath the pink zone. We had the close of the red candle, the open of the blue candle, got right back above the pink zone and moved back into the 1.3000. So a false breakout at this point. We didn't take a sell because it wasn't a true breakout. So at this point, of course, we'll wait for the data to see what happens at NFP time coming up in about 45 minutes from the recording of this video. If, again, we get some positive news for the U.S., if it's good news for the U.S. in disagreement with what the Fed had to say earlier this week, we might look for some lift for the U.S. dollar. We might look for this to continue to pressure back up again. If it is negative, in agreement with what the Fed had to say and the dovish comments the Fed had to say earlier this week, then we might look for another U.S. dollar sell-off, a challenge of the pink zone, a final breakdown of the 2920 level, and a continuation lower. So those are some of the things we'll be watching for on the U.S. CAD today. Let's move on into the U.S. franc. Of course, we're in a significant support level. We've had this channel or range drawn out between the two red trend lines for the past couple of days, studying the pattern of the trend. We had the fall, the rise, the fall, the rise. Now we're in the fall phase. Now, of course, we're going to question to see, are we going to see the rise phase again within this falling channel that we see here on the daily time frame? Today's NFP could be the catalyst for that. If, again, we get some positive data in disagreement with what the Fed had to say, we look for a lift for the U.S. dollar and this to turn back higher. Negative news on NFP and jobs information, we look for the continuation lower, likely the breakdown of the 95.50 level, and the continuation of the downtrend for the U.S. franc today. Moving on over to the euro dollar, significantly the same yet opposite. If we get that negative data for the U.S. dollar, we look for the breakout of our resistance level, the 114 level, and the continuation higher. Positive news sends it back lower. This is a significant level right around 114. We've looked at this quite a bit over the past few days in the live trade room. Zooming out here to the weekly time frame, and you can really see how significant the top of that red box is. Look at that. We had the long-term downtrend since last January of 2015. Over a year now, we've been stuck inside this range, inside the red box. Could today's news be the catalyst that finally breaks it out of this box and starts the uptrend for the euro dollar? We don't know yet. But again, I think if we get some negative news, negative jobs numbers, unemployment rate rises, then we likely do see that continuation higher, the break of 114, and likely back into the 115s, the pink shaded area at the very top of the chart. Positive data likely see some reversal for this pair. Take it down to the 4-hour chart. Look at the pattern of the trend over the past few weeks. We saw the rise on the ECB news several weeks ago and then a pullback. We saw the rise on FOMC news a few weeks ago and then a pullback. And now we've seen the rise on the Fed comments earlier this week. The question is, are we going to see the continuation or the pullback that we've seen over the past few weeks? And of course, I think that will likely depend on today's news to see how we'll look for the market to handle this 114 level. Moving on to the GBP USD. Yesterday and over the past couple of days in the live trade room, we've discussed the potential to sell the blue shaded area, the 1.4385, 4400 level, into the blue shaded area. And yesterday, during yesterday's live trade room, I was actually in a trade. I actually 2 days ago suggested on the member notifications to sell into the blue shaded area. So we've been selling that blue zone for a couple of days now. And as you can see, let's take it on down to the 4-hour time frame. That has proven to be a fruitful opportunity as it has now fallen from the upper 143s, 4400 level all the way down now into the 142s once again. Again, we'll watch the news today. Let's zoom it back out to the daily time frame. Negative news obviously sends us back higher again. Negative news, we're back to the blue zone or higher, even back up into the 4500s. Positive news may see the return of the downward slide here for the GBP USD today. Moving on to the USD JPY, US dollar versus Japanese yen. Long term, we've been in a range. Couple of months now. Since the beginning of February, we've been in a range in this period of congestion inside the black box. Resistance at 114.0, support at 111. I think, again, today's news could be the catalyst that changes everything here for this currency pair. Positive news, we'll look for another test of the top of the range, the 114 level. And significant positive news, we might look for the breakout of this range and the turnaround for this currency pair. And on negative news, we'll likely look for the challenge of the support low, the lows down here at 111, and of course a breakout of that support low. We look for it to continue the downtrend on negative U.S. data. So we're kind of in a range right now, a little period of congestion. Take a look at this. Over the past few days, we've seen it stuck inside this little black box here. We actually outlined this yesterday in the trade room. And I noted yesterday that if you were going to trade the U.S. yen, you needed it to break outside this black box. So negative data today sends us lower. Back underneath 112, we're back into 111. Underneath 111, we look for the continuation lower. If it's good news for the U.S. and we see some positive data, we'll likely look for the break back above this little black box. The top of that black box is right around the 112.65 level. So 112 at the bottom, 112.65 at the top. If you're looking for an opportunity today, I think we need to break out of this period of congestion for the U.S. yen. Moving on to the AUD-USD, significant resistance high, and we have found resistance for this pair over the past few days, 3 days to be exact. Take a look at the top red line, the very top of the chart, 7,700. You see historical information of resistance, support, and congestion. We outlined that yesterday during the live trade room. Let's just go ahead and zoom it in here on the daily time frame. You can see the last 3 days finding resistance underneath 77. So far, unable to sustain a breakout above here. Now, negative news for the U.S. coming up at in 45 minutes from now. Negative NFP, higher unemployment. We likely look for the break of 77 and the continuation higher. Positive news likely sees the resistance hold, and we look for it back down here towards 7,600 or potentially lower down to the 4-hour time frame. Take a look at how significant this resistance level has been for the past couple of days. Again, underneath it, and positive data sends it back down towards the pink shaded area. Above it, and negative data sends it back up towards the yellow shaded area, 77.70, 7,800 for the Australian dollar today. And lastly, New Zealand dollar. We, of course, earlier this week finally saw the breakout of our range. We've been studying this range for quite a long time. Look at that black box on the chart. We're going all the way back to September and October of 2015. The red circle shows resistance. The blue box in the middle shows resistance. The green circle on the right shows resistance. So we've been studying this area of resistance into the mid-68s for quite a long time, even taking opportunities to go short at that level. Earlier this week, we finally saw with the Fed speech and the dovish comments the push through the resistance and through the top of that range. The question is this a real deal breakout? Because fundamentally, we know that the New Zealand dollar has high interest rates, and it should be going down based on that. We know that long term, we expect and we have had significant positive data for the U.S., but the comments from the Fed causing negative sentiment. So fundamentally, it makes sense for this to go down, but we've seen it break out higher. Is this a false breakout? I guess we'll have to wait and find out. If we get those positive comments from or positive data from NFP today, we look for a reversal for this to go back down. Any negative news in support of what the Fed had to say earlier this week, we'll look for the continuation higher here for the New Zealand dollar today. Take it on down to the 4-hour time frame. Look at the congestion right now. Market's not really sure what to do yet, and I think it's in a period of waiting until we get past today's news and see how the market interprets that news later on today for the New Zealand dollar.
From Forex Traders Daily, this has been your daily analysis with Ross Mullins. If you would like to get Ross's analysis on all the currency pairs he's watching and all the trades he takes today, join him in his live trade room by clicking on the link below. Please leave any comments you have about today's video in the comments section below.